Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video, and in this video we are talking raid prep. The raid is just over 1 day away now, and I wanted to recap all the most important information so you guys have a clear picture before you dive in. The recommended power level, the necessary steps to get the exotic questline started, weapon recommendations, and a few more things on top. So, here are 5 things you need to know to get ready for the Leviathan Raid this Wednesday. Of course, if you do find this helpful and you do enjoy it, then a like would be super appreciated. And be sure to comment down below and let me know if you guys have any questions. Now, kicking things off at number 1, recommended power level. Up until a couple of hours ago, myself, and I'm sure many of you included, have been frantically grinding gear to try and increase our power level as much as possible, so that we can stand the best chance in the raid on Wednesday. However, without an actual goal to aim for, it's really just been a case of aiming as high as possible. Well, Luke Smith finally revealed that the recommended power level for the Leviathan Raid is 260 to 280. So it's safe to say that a lot of you that have been pushing up to, say, 290 or even higher, I think you're ready. As with all the raids, there's a recommended range simply because the raid gets progressively more difficult the further you go, and typically you lean on raid drops within to help you bridge the gap. So while you could definitely enter the raid if you are 260 power level, the further you go, the harder it'll become. So if you want to stand the best chance possible, I'd honestly say that 280 should be where you aim, with anything above that obviously being a definite bonus. So, those are your numbers, that's what you're aiming for, and as a reminder, the raid goes live on Wednesday the 13th at 10 AM Pacific, 6 PM UK time. Now moving on from there, in at number 2, let's talk about that exotic questline and the exotic raid weapon. By now, I'm pretty sure you've all encountered this item here on the comms. It'll drop randomly from killing Cabal enemies once you've completed the campaign and hit level 20. It can drop in a number of different locations. My first 2 dropped from killing Cabal in public events. Meanwhile, my third one dropped from Cabal inside this week's Nightfall. When you obtain it, it'll then ask you to recover communication ciphers from Red Legion troops on Nessus, and you'll need 5 of those. So once again, all you need to do is go and kill random Cabal on Nessus, and the items will randomly drop. Sometimes they drop thick and fast, other times it'll take a little bit longer, but either way, within 2 or 3 public events, you should have all of the ones you need. And once you do that, it'll then take you to step 2, which requires that you await the World Eater. So now, we wait. The World Eater, aka the Leviathan, is the raid that drops this Wednesday. This is the image that we've seen in the concept art, and it's also the ship that we saw in the opening cutscene for Destiny 2. This is quite literally a ship that eats worlds. Obviously we haven't seen it ourselves in game, but knowing that, it is of course fair to say that it's going to be pretty damn big. However, thanks to some information from the Destiny database, we actually have a little more insight into the quest steps that follow. A few of them are classified, so I imagine they will likely reference raid specifics, but we're at least able to piece together a rough idea of what we'll be doing on the way to obtaining the Legend of Acrius, or Acrius. Step 3, the one that directly follows the step that we're on right now, is classified, so for that we'll have to wait till Wednesday to see, but it could just be as simple as complete the raid. Step 4 will have you return to the tower to seek out a hacked frame. Frames being those little robot dudes that you see around. Supposedly he will be somewhere around the bazaar, so we'll speak to him and he will be our point of contact for this quest. Step 5 will then have you go to the arms dealer strike and complete that to take out the dealer himself. Shortly followed by step 6 where you visit the frame again, and at this point he will give you an item known as the Acrius or the Acrius. Now I'm going to assume this is a legendary shotgun since the other exotic weapons that we've obtained from quests thus far have come in pairs, a legendary followed by an accompanying exotic. The reason I say this is because step 7 will then have you do 3 things. Firstly, eliminate Cabal. Secondly, eliminate Cabal at close range, and thirdly, eliminate multiple Cabal without reloading. So it's more than likely a legendary shotgun, which will later become exotic. Following this, you will then speak to the hacked frame again for step 8, after which you will then return to the raid for step 9 to eliminate bosses in the Leviathan Raid. Then step 10 will have you seek out the frame again, and step 11 is classified. So if I had to hazard a guess, I would say that for step 9 you eliminate some of the early bosses, and step 11 will have you take on the final boss. After that, you speak to the frame one final time, and he will give you the exotic shotgun, the Legend of Acrius. This is that shotgun. We've seen a couple of very quick gameplay snippets from the original gameplay reveal trailer, but the intrinsic perk for this is Shock Blast, where this weapon fires blasts of high damage arc energy that overpenetrates the enemies. In addition to that, it also has Full Bore, which increases range but decreases stability and handling speed, Accurized Ballistics, which further increases the range, Long March, which allows you to detect enemies on your radar from further away, and finally Fitted Stock for a further increase to stability, moderate recoil control, and a decrease to handling speed. I will say that as raid exotics go, this one definitely looks a lot more understated than the other ones that we've encountered in Destiny 1, but until we actually get our hands on it, we won't truly know what it's like for sure. Now, assuming that there's no weekly lockout, then we should be able to get our hands on this on Wednesday. It will of course require multiple visits to the raid, so do expect to be doing the raid maybe 2, possibly even 3 times back to back if you want to complete the quest line. But assuming it is accessible on Wednesday, then I'll be sure to follow up with a complete guide for you guys to explain all the steps in greater detail. However, moving on from there, in at number 3, a bit of backstory on the raid. Now, if you haven't finished the Destiny 2 campaign and you want to avoid spoilers, now would be a good time to step away, since I'm going to reference something that happens at the end. Assuming, however, that you're still here, then we'll continue. Gawler was of course our main adversary in the campaign, however since we defeated him, I'm pretty sure we won't be seeing him again. It's not going to be like Arekkz in the Taken King, where we chase him throughout the story and into the raid. In Destiny 2, it seems like the raid will centre around someone else, still Cabal, but instead a Cabal named Emperor Callus. There's actually an adventure on Nessus that gives us a bit of insight into their plans. If you want to seek it out for yourself, it's called Invitation from the Emperor. But the high level is this. Emperor Callus was a former Cabal leader, but he was removed from power by Gaul and the Consul and banished to his Leviathan ship. Interestingly, based on what the book in the Collector's Edition says, it seems that the raid may well be an open invitation from Emperor Callus for anyone who thinks they're worthy to come and defeat those who betrayed him. The book lists a number of different enemies that could end up being bosses within the raid. I won't go into details on those for now, otherwise we'd be here for a very long time, but it might well be that the raid ends up being like some sort of gauntlet or challenge arena, still raid in design, but essentially a means for us to take on the enemies of the Emperor. The question then remains, what does Callus have planned? Will he be the final raid boss, or will he be like the game's master, so to speak? Only time will tell. However, in addition to that, it seems Callus has the Cabal scanning Nessus for materials and information since it's the next planetoid that he intends to consume with his giant Leviathan World Eater ship. And as such, it might well be that we start the raid in Nessus and somehow work our way onto the ship. But I won't speculate any further since we don't have long to wait now until we find out for sure. But either way, this definitely has potential to be one of the most interesting raids to date, so I for one cannot wait to jump in. However, before we do that, there's a couple more things I want to cover. Firstly, in at number 4, some recommended weapons. Now, I put together a top 5 exotics the other day. These are weapons I feel you guys should try and use if you have them, and if you don't, then you should try and get them if you can. So if you haven't seen that, I will link that video down below. However, there are 2 in particular that I want to call out again, since they are, above all else, 2 weapons that I think are going to be incredibly potent. The first one is of course the Skyburner's Oath. This is the exotic scout rifle that gets stronger when you aim down sights, but it also deals bonus damage to Cabal and penetrates Cabal shields as if they don't exist. So if you have this, you can essentially treat phalanxes as normal Cabal grunts because they might as well not have a shield. The other weapon is the Merciless Exotic Fusion Rifle. This honestly has the potential to be one of the strongest weapons in Destiny 2. Fusion rifles are pretty powerful, and thanks to the intrinsic perk on this weapon, anytime you land a non-lethal hit, it shortens the charge time. If you're using this on bosses that quite obviously take a lot of damage to kill, you can genuinely get to the point that this begins firing instantly, like it's a scout rifle. Furthermore, if you pair this with a Titan Barricade, then you can completely eliminate the reload downtime and truly maximise your damage potential with this. Finally, the last weapon, this one is actually just a legendary weapon, but if you're looking for a non-exotic option so that you can leave your other options open, then I strongly recommend checking out the Nameless Midnight Scout Rifle. It is something that a lot of my raid team are going to be running with, and it's a weapon that you can get for free from Zavala when completing part of your Nightfall milestone. He gives you a choice between this, a pulse rifle and an auto rifle, and this is honestly such a great weapon. The explosive payload perk is pretty nice when enemies are clumped together, and it's got pretty decent impact. I'm a big fan of scout rifles, but some of the ones I've used just didn't feel like they were putting in the work, but this one hits like a truck. If you didn't pick it up when handing in the milestone, then it is still a Vanguard weapon, so handing in Vanguard rep tokens would also give you a chance at getting this. I'm going to run this simply because it also then leaves my options open for potential exotic energy or power weapons. Of course, outside of these 3, there are plenty of other options too. Some of them I covered in my top 5 video. The Rat King is an obvious choice simply because it stacks with up to 6 players. It's clearly designed with a raid team in mind. And the Wardcliff Coil is one of the most deadly rocket launchers you can get. So ultimately, take whatever works for you, but the 3 that I listed, you can't go wrong. Then finally, to round it out with number 5, a reminder to take advantage of your damage ability combos. I will link my video from this morning down below since that one goes into much greater detail on this. But in the raid, you're going to want to maximise your damage output wherever possible, and as such, abilities like the Warlock's Empowering Rift, the Sunbreaker's Titan Hammer Strike, and the Nightstalker Hunter's Tether are all going to be incredibly important. You can get a whopping 95% damage increase if you pair an Empowering Rift and a Hammer Strike, and a good 75% damage increase if you replace the strike with a Tether. These are things you want to take frequent advantage of because that's going to make a lot of your encounters much easier and quicker if you can almost double your damage output. But again, if you want to see that in depth, then I'm simply going to point you to my maximum DPS video since that has all the numbers and combinations that you could want. In the meantime, however, that's pretty much it. That's everything you need to know ahead of the raid this week. I will be running it with my raid team, taking part in the world first race as always, so if any of you guys want to watch, we will be live streaming it over on Twitch, but I will of course remind you nearer the time. Until then, thank you very much for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.